All right, friends, welcome back to the Elevated Feminine podcast with your hosts. I'm Nicole and my co-host,
Jenn.
she's here too in the house. Hi, Jenn.
Hello,
We're super excited
everyone.
to have you, and we're super excited to welcome our today's guest, Yelena Theofilatos.
Thank you
I hope
so
I did that
much.
right. I've been practicing, friends. I hope I pronounced it right. She's shaking her head yes, so that's good. Um, and we're really excited to be speaking with Yelena today because she is an anxiety hypnotherapist, and she specializes actually working with lady entrepreneurs, so people like Jenn and myself, providing them with bespoke hypnotherapy and coaching on how to quit the worry habit and regulate the nervous system so that they can build new skills, inner calm, self-trust, and resilience. All amazing things that I think every single one of us, especially as entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
especially as female entrepreneurs, as we're just starting to enter the workforce in the whole grand scheme of the world workforce, our generations, I feel like, are blessed to have the flexibility and freedom to be
Mm.
bosses as women. So I feel this is a really exciting time to be talking to Yelena. So welcome, lovely. Welcome. Take it
Thank you
away.
so
Tell us
much.
a bit about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just amazed by the fact that we're like all over the world right now and we're still
Yes.
doing it, speaking about flexibility.
Yes.
Across the time zones and everything.
Yeah,
So
just for our
yeah.
guests, actually, good point, Yeliana. Yeliana's in Hawaii and Jen's in Barbados, and I am in France. So very different time zones here.
Yeah.
But we made it work. It took a little moving things around, but we made it work. So we're happy to have you.
Definitely, definitely. I'm so happy that you reached out and now we're talking about my favorite subjects in the world.
Yeah.
That came to become my favorite subject in the world because of the work, of course, I've been doing on myself. I feel like that's how everybody get into any kind of a helping profession of any sorts. I always wanted to be a therapist, but didn't really happen until later in my life. So as of right now, COVID made me do it, by the way. I didn't imagine myself becoming an entrepreneur whatsoever. I went to school for social work. I became, I had my master's degree, a licensed social worker and stuff. I was like, here we go, social work, working in a system, which has its own problems and needs some help, of course. But as I was moving to Hawaii, COVID hit and all of the social work position was just frozen. Nobody was hiring. And my boyfriend and I were like, okay, what shall we do? Life goes on. We started a garden and I dove back into studying, of course, because I love doing that and I can always read about therapy. And I read about hypnotherapy and I did a course with professor. He specializes in depression. He's an actual like trained hypnotherapist for 20 or more years. And he just blew my mind. I was like, where were you when I was in grad school? Because in grad school, they technically supposed to teach you how to help people, like in terms of therapeutic work. But really, there was just pouring so much theory in us. And every time I would go into the field and actually talk to people and be a therapist, I was basically just applying everything that I knew that was working for me, like mindfulness, working with your mindset, working with your body, but it wasn't necessarily what they were teaching me because they definitely didn't do a great job bridging that gap in between like
Mm.
theory and the field. So anyway, I found hypnotherapy. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Let me do it for the rest of my life. And here I am. Hypnotherapy is my one of my primal modalities, even though, and I feel like even though this is a place where I should tell people more about what I do now, what really comes to mind is to say a couple words about hypnotherapy and how people
Yeah.
misconceive it. I don't know, even if it's a word. I'm Russian, by the way. English is not my first language. So sometimes I will say strange things, and that's okay.
You make up words. I'm sure we'll figure it out. And if not, we'll say, what do you mean by that?
And even if you speak English, you still say strange words, so don't worry.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a good so when people think about hypnotherapy, they think about, oh, like, all right, this is like a therapy, like cognitive behavioral therapy or psychoanalytic. There's like about 700 types of therapies out there in the
Wow.
world. Somebody just like count them eventually. They did, and I think there are more coming. There's always more. And hypnotherapy is not a therapy in and of itself. Hypnosis, it's more of a delivery system for the suggestions. And let me just clarify it. In talk therapy, there are suggestions thrown all the time. Every time somebody comes to me, they, for like a normal talk therapy, like when I was an intern in my social work, I would basically not necessarily tell them what to do, but in the way we discussed their situation, it was suggestive of them doing something different and new. And they were not closing their eyes. I was not guiding them like in a hypnotherapy way, but at the same time, there were suggestions all the time. And what hypnosis does is just to put them in the form of a guided journey when the person closes their eyes and etc. But ultimately, hypnosis itself is not the modality that guides the therapist in what they choose to focus on. Like one therapist will tell you, you got to learn this skill, this is good for you. And then they take that and put it in a form of a hypnotherapy. Another person would think that depending on their modality they're working with, let's say they're psychoanalytic, they would tell you to go and explore your childhood because this is what their modality tells them to do. And they will take that and they focus on a childhood and use hypnosis to guide you in those places. But there's no such a thing as one hypnotherapy. And I'm quite passionate about telling people about that so they don't expect that they come in and they get this every time, just like, we go to the store, we buy our favorite cereal, and we're like, okay, I know what I'm getting. A lot of times you don't, because it depends on the practitioner, their skill set, what they inspired by when they form their suggestions. So with that said, yes, I work with hypnotherapy and I work with a solution-focused therapy as my primary focus. So instead of focusing on what is wrong with a person, even though they always come with a problem, quote unquote, to fix, I focus on everything that's already going well with them. And so actually, this is my framework. What we have going on with each person is something that they doing that is working well. Let's do more of that. Something that is making it worse, let's somehow minimize it or stop doing that. And there's number 3, something else that they can do to help themselves be better, something they're not doing. Let's introduce that. This is it. This is all it is. And it allows me to really amplify what's there. And I find it works so well with people who like feeling stuck and they're down on themselves because they feel like, oh, I have this major problem and it's been going on forever and ever. And when I bring their attention to something that's already working well or have worked in the past and they can do it again, they like perk up a little. Their mood changes, and mood has such a tremendous power to push us, propel us forward to healing because it inspires us to do something new and different to help ourselves. And that makes all the difference in the world. So I definitely find that that is super helpful when I work with female entrepreneurs. And not only I'm just supposed to niche down, so this is what I'm doing.
That's a conversation for a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
Niche
Definitely.
Yeah, too niche or not too niche? That is the question we all should be asking ourselves. But that's another story. What I
Yes.
love about your perspective is the specificity that you have about it not being a therapy, meaning there's no one way to do and to be in a hypnotherapy session. Like, yes, there's some standard practices that happen, like you close your eyes and you go on a journey sort of things. But like you said, the journey is always different, depends on the practitioner. I'm sure it probably, correct me if I'm wrong, depends on the clients, where they're at and what's going on for them. And what I love most is that with the eyes closed, it kind of allows free reign for imagination. Right? And so you can never predict where your imagination is going to go or the symbolism that's going to arise. And so I just find that so fascinating. But I like the specificity you had there with that.
Thank you for commenting on that. Definitely a fan of specificity and knowing what I'm doing. But it's so true when the people have their eyes closed. This is what I tend to point out. What makes a difference in between the talk therapy, which is like this conversation just that is flowing in real time on, and the guided journey is when I pretty much share the same information, just maybe in the format of stories for the people who are guided, versus that I tell them it just straightforward when it's a talk therapy, is then when they close their eyes and they're not talking back to me, meaning they're not responding immediately, it actually has more time to just permeate, just land there and let them not necessarily like take it in and go with my suggestion. This is definitely always just an invitation to consider a possibility. This is how my teacher told me, but this is how he does it. It's just an invitation. And I love that. It's so inviting an invitation, and there's no pressure, no force whatsoever. And people just like have their moment to think about it, basically absorb it, and they come up with the best thing that I will never come up with. You made me think of one of my clients who just, and this is why I always check in with them. Like, what are you experiencing now? This is my favorite question because I have no clue. Even I'm saying very much specific words and I'm aiming to get a certain response from them because I'm using the words that associate them, let's say, in certain states of happiness and joy and whatnot, amplifying their resources. I don't know. Maybe they just went into like their trauma or something. And as long as I don't ask, I don't know. So I ask them, and sometimes they share like, I'm in the field of flowers and I'm riding a horse, and I'm thinking about a specific client. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. For me, it doesn't really seem like a resource, like for my person, but for her it was. And that's all I want to do, for them to tap into their resources. And if I can somehow create a container for them to be able to do that, that's all that matters.
Love that.
No, it sounds really great. I mean, closing the eyes, it kind of takes away the distractions and allows you to go inward and really feel and experience your emotions and allow them to flow, how they land. And then, maybe you are in a field of flowers riding a horse and you feel free, you feel liberated. And that is something that you never felt before. And you probably wouldn't have gotten there if they were sitting looking at you, probably thinking that you're judging them, So taking that away, and then they probably feel safe too, to be able to get themselves to a position where you can close your eyes and just really breathe and feel safe. It almost made me think of a guided meditation.
Oh, that's like a whole nother topic.
But Nicole will tell you that I'm always making my notes. So when you said that it's a delivery system, the suggestion, I'm thinking it's reminding me of guided meditation, because that's essentially what you're doing. You're guiding people to look at other things and to look at trauma. Remember when you were a child, go back to that younger self and say something, So that's why I started to think about it. And I never thought about guided meditation could be a type of hypnosis. I'm speaking obviously under correction because I don't know what I'm talking about, but that thought came when I heard you talk about it.
But you're right on it. I'm sorry. I'm just like, I have so pent up emotions about this. People don't understand how similar guided meditation and what we call quote unquote hypnosis is, and how hypnosis is really, as a like this going inside experience, is pervasive. We just not necessarily notice and label it as such. But guided meditation, there's a book written by actually the person who trained me, who compared guided meditation and hypnotic scripts, like word by word. He broke them down and he saw that they follow very similar patterns in how they introduce the topic of the meditation, hypnosis, what they try to evoke in the person, what language they use. And basically the difference, and this is how I see it, is that hypnotists or people trained in hypnotherapy tend to know how to use a language better in a way that is more inviting. Not all of them, but some of them. And the difference, let's say I was listening to Insight Timer another day, some time ago, actually, and some of their meditations are great. The content is great, but the way they deliver is a little bit forceful for me. Like, do this and do this now. And I'm like, I need more space personally when I'm told what to do. I tend not to like it anyway. And
Yeah.
even just
There's always a
slight,
little back.
yeah.
Jen and I are both like, yeah, don't tell me what to do.
Exactly. So just tell me if that feels different to you when somebody says, breathe, breathe in a slow and easeful manner. Okay, actually, it doesn't sound as bad, I feel like, the way I said it, but the way I would soften it, I would say you can breathe easeful and spaciously or whatnot. And breathing is a very simple example. We're not really asking the person to do much. It's actually quite easy buy-in, so to say, in the guided meditation or hypnosis. But when you ask them to really like connect to the memories of, let's say, them being empowered, them being on that horse in the flower field and like being their best self, there's a bit of a jump to make. And it's more inviting, at least for me, when I guide them in this like soft way. You don't have to, but you can. And that's a very just mild example of how language is different depending on your training. But they're identical. I don't tell people in Hollywood that guided meditation, hypnosis is pretty much the same thing, but it is. People like hypnosis. This is just like total mystery. I don't know what it's about. Guided meditation, who cares? Like guided meditation, whatever. Can make it doesn't change me, but it does. It's basically the virtue of hearing the message of therapeutic message of any kind all over again and really closing your eyes and experiencing yourself. Like what you said earlier, like they're not looking at me and feeling uncomfortable. No, you're in your own world. You're actually experiencing the message instead of just hearing it.
Yeah.
And I love that you're bringing up this distinction too, because there is like the first I've done I've tried actually hypnotherapy from a number of different practitioners. First, it started out of curiosity, and then it was just like, that was amazing. I just need more of that in my life. But before I did it at first, I was like, oh, I don't need that. You know, I don't need to be told to cluck like a chicken and things like that. So I think this is, for me, I'm really excited because when I found out that's not what hypnotherapy is only about, it might be a thing that is like a party trick, right? You know, like that kind of stuff. And I don't even know how much that actually works. But before I actually tried it, there might be some people listening to our episode who are thinking that exact thing, because before I tried hypnotherapy, that's what I thought it was. And it's like, oh, I don't want to be hypnotized. You know, I don't want to be like zombie-ish and not in my right mind and all of that. So I really love that we're having this conversation because it is more, and the invitation piece really appeals to me too, because it's a suggestion and you're acting as a guide for someone. I'm super, even as a business coach, I don't like to tell people what to do. I like to give options and they get to choose which option is the best one for them. I can give my expertise and my advice and my insight, but ultimately, you know, even when someone's building their website, this is what my expert opinion is. This is how it's going to work best. but here's option A and option B that you can get, like we can meld what you want into it and I can make it work. Like it just feels so much more collaborative and supportive when you have choices and empowering, like Jenn and I are super passionate. That's why we have this podcast. We're super passionate about empowering women. And so, yeah, right. Like it's just the whole aspect of choice is so, so important. And language, Jenn and I have done a couple of podcasts already on conversation, and we're both like, we're not done yet. We're going to have to revisit the whole conversation about conversation and communication because there's more to say. So yeah, I really love that.
For sure.
We're going to take a super quick break and come back with Yelena and talk a lot more about this because these podcasts are just getting better and better and better. I'm just blown away. Just blown away. Our guests are incredible and you can be a guest too, but we'll be right back in a few moments. Hi there, I'm Jenn, co-host of the Elevated Feminine podcast, where real women have real conversations. If there's a topic you are passionate about and want to share your views and ideas, then we want to hear from you. Send us an email at elevatedfeminine9@gmail.com. We can hardly wait to have a conversation with you.
And welcome back, listeners. We are here with your co-hosts, Nicole and Jenn. And we're here with our guest today, Yelena Theofilatos. And she's here to talk to us today a little bit about hypnotherapy and the work she does with anxiety and women and all these amazing things that she does. And we were just talking before our break, we were just talking about this seemingly common misconception about hypnotherapy being like, Yelena corrected me offside for a moment and told me it's actually specifically called stage hypnotherapy. So we wanted to just kind of revisit that because there might be a lot of people out there who think that that's what hypnotherapy is, and it's not what Yelena is here to talk to us today. So can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Oh, sure. I'm so passionate about spreading the word about this. Although probably stage hypnotists will probably hate me if they know about it because it's basically giving their secrets away and it's their bread and butter. But anyway, stage hypnosis, it's when someone, like a group of people being called on stage and they perform all kinds of silly things. And everybody laughs and have a great time. So this is the one that we're talking about. It all begins with participants being chosen out of the crowd. And there's a few tests that the stage hypnotist runs to see who are the most exhibitionist-like, who are most into getting attention, because you're not going to raise your hand if you are uncomfortable with getting attention. You're not going to go there first of all. So there might be something about your personality that already is giving away your desire to be there and to play and perform and to put on a good show. The hypnotist doesn't want people who will try to like resist him on purpose and show their power or will that he cannot bend it. He doesn't want those people because they're not going to put on a show. So he's picking and choosing. I would actually do
that. I would be like, oh yeah, pick me. I dare ya.
Right? And he, I feel like, has been trained. I think those people are trained to like look for those people and make sure that they don't get them because that's not good for their performance.
Image, yeah.
And they pick those that they are ready to play. And a lot of times when those shows are happening, either in high schools, proms, or the college students where the people in a group already kind of prone to want to just like show off a little bit, and there's a lot of peer pressure to do well. You can't go on a stage and be a fool of yourself and not follow the directions, because then you're gonna spoil the show, and that's not okay because we're all here watching and wanting to have fun. So there is a bit of that, of a bubble of a peer pressure, I guess, in any setting when that happens, really. And what is great about stage hypnosis is that you can go on a stage and do all kinds of silly things and then blame it on hypnosis. It's like people like blaming things on alcohol. I did. When I was young. I do something stupid and then you're like, oh, but it wasn't me, it was hypnosis. So you basically getting away with anything. So now you are going on stage, you're going to get all of the attention. You can play, you can be silly, and you're going to get away from it. People actually going to have a great time looking at you doing that, and they will praise you for being like that. So they then go on stage and they're already ready to go. You know, all the work it's happened for the hypnotist happens before the performance begins. It's about picking the right people, and now you just run them through tricks. And people are, as I said, peer pressure to perform and play well. And there's more to it, but I don't want to take more time talking about. But this is something to look into and realize that this is basically social psychology more than just any kind of a power of the hypnotist to have you do silly things. It's just set up in this beautiful way to make it work.
It's really intelligent how they play. It's really kind of just like marketing, to be honest, because a lot of marketing things are based on social psychology and mindset sort of personas, if you will. And so as a psychology major myself, I'm like, oh, that makes perfect. As soon as you said that, I'm like, oh, of course it is. That makes perfect sense, because social psychology is all about how we adapt and we shift and we morph and we become these chameleons in order to be part of, accepted as part of the group. So that's super interesting. Now I just want to go to a show and be like, and just sort of like analyze everybody. And then I want to be the person that's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna blow your cover, buddy.
Oh yeah. Do it.
And then the jerk that ruins the fun for everybody. So, maybe I won't do that.
You just resist a little bit, make it seem like it's not working, but then you can give in, just make it
like one eye open. Am I supposed to do something?
Is this when I clap? Okay, let's stop.
And they also make it so like the way they frame it, like you coming on a stage sometimes, is that the smartest people, that kind of people, they are like willing to play. So basically, if you're not playing in with their game and you are that person who's trying to resist, you framed as stupid or silly or something. So you're like, there's additional layer of like this pressure to do well. Anyway.
So fascinating. So interesting. It's very manipulative in some ways too, but it's just, so fascinating. But that's just my psychology brain that's like, ooh, people are interesting. That's just kind of deep.
For sure.
That's awesome. So I would love to hear more about, I know Jen would agree, speaking for you, Jen, but I just, we know each other. I would really love to hear about how we can use hypnotherapy for nervous system regulation, because especially since the onslaught of COVID, I just find that there's so much more. It just brought up a lot of stuff for a lot of people. And I feel like nervous system regulation is a really hot topic, but for a good reason. I'm actually really happy that it's kind of getting trendy to talk about nervous system regulation, because I think this is something we should have been aware of and treating and talking about and addressing for decades now, because it's just prevalent and it is a thing. Stress creates dysregulation in our system, whether it's physical stress, mental stress. So can you talk to us a little bit about hypnotherapy and how the work you do helps people in that way?
Well, what comes to mind is talking about polyvagal theory, first and foremost, which is the theory of nervous system states and how we can use that knowledge to befriend our nervous system, basically. And I cross-pollinated with the hypnotherapy, but I feel like without knowing the basics of what our states are, how we move through them, what does it mean in terms of how our nervous states has everything to do with kind of stories we tell ourselves in our minds, because this is where the hypnotherapy really shines in helping us to shift those stories, that self-talk that we become prone to if we have experienced some traumatizing event, and let's say our COVID quite traumatizing in its own way. Yeah, things can go away just like this. You're like, what? My nervous system is a little more sensitized to the possibility of it from this point on. And the rain has begun. Okay. Side note. When we have experienced trauma, we have a tendency to spend more time or be easily shifted into those states when our nervous system feels threatened. It shifts into the more of a survival mode, which is, it's so hard to talk about without throwing the terminology in. But let's say sympathetic, this is where anxiety likes to be, this is this hypervigilant, restless, agitated, when it's basically very easy to fall into that state from the normal state of feeling safety, because safety requires us to still like move around and do things and have that energy. There is movement to it when we go about our day, like as entrepreneurs. We start our day, we like get going. But if something overwhelms us, it's really easy to like get slightly a little too activated. A little too activation, we're already moving into more of a sympathetic energy, which is like, okay, I need all of this energy to either fight or flee. Like this, I have this threat. This is what our body wants to do. And now it's shifted all of its perception and it's feeling that it's threatened, even though we might not be, like in our physical environment. What we might be threatened by, like in the case of the anxiety, is our thoughts about the future. What if this happens? What if that happens? And if we are already kind of stressed, if we have a lot on our plate that day, we have a lot to do, our body's kind of like very much activated, sort of on the verge of becoming dysregulated. We might have a tendency to even go deeper on those thoughts, amplify them, like really get sucked into the self-talk of all the worry thoughts, the catastrophizing, thinking about worst case scenarios. And what it does, it reinforces this dysregulation even more, and it becomes a cycle. It becomes a fear worry cycle. Our system feeling like that activate those thoughts. The thoughts activate the state even further, all the way, unless we're really aware of this cycle and able to pause and manage it better. It can drive us all the way into a state of panic when the rational mind is no longer online. It's like bye, shuts off in a way, and we are just being driven by our emotions. And then, since our rational mind is no longer present, so to say, as much, all the improbable scenarios, even though they're just in our head, can seem so real and like, okay, this is definitely going to happen. Then we just totally lose it. So the idea is to catch ourselves before we go there, of course. And I don't know if it's a hypnotherapy yet at that point. It's more of a self-awareness work, more so. It's like really feeling into your state throughout the day and seeing how you move through them and how it affects your thoughts. Like this is what I've been doing with myself for a long time, and I can totally witness how the same event triggers me differently depending where I am in my nervous system that day. And then I can work with a self-talk and in hypnotherapy and make sure that my self-talk is supportive and it's encouraging and it's compassionate, because this is what is good for the nervous system. Every time we begin to criticize ourselves, actually attacking ourselves, and it received as an attack by our nervous system, and it's only fuels the fire of anxiety of that state. So I feel like this is where hypnotherapy comes in the most in terms of the nervous system and changing the self-talk. So it's supportive instead of attacking.
That's super important too, because I do a lot of work with that with my clients as well, because I work a lot with people who are starting fresh and mostly wellness practitioners and coaches. And so the business side of things just is, they have all these stories about I'm not tech savvy and I hate this stuff and I don't like it and I never want to look at it. I'm like, well, that's great. If you have the cash to go hire out good help to do it, that's awesome. But if you don't, you got to learn to like this stuff. And the only way you're going to, like, you don't have to master it, you don't have to love it, but you have to like it as an avenue to get you to where you want to go. Like social media is not a huge thing for me. I don't love it, but I can recognize the benefit of using it to enhance where I want to go. I want to have a large impact. And so it took me changing that story, for example, of from really don't like social media to I love the potential that social media offers me in today. I don't have to go knocking door to door. I show up for a couple of hours online. I talk to amazing people like you, Yelena. That's how we met. Reaching out to amazing people like yourself. And then there's beautiful connection. You're in Hawaii. There's no way door to door I would have found you. Right. So, but it's a perspective shift, and it's something that you really have to, and I call it getting out ahead of it, because you're right. Like the anxiety is all in the future. It's all about the impending potential dooms. Right. So when you get out ahead of it and you catch yourself, that self-awareness that you're talking about, it really does help ground things in what is really actually true now. That might happen, but it also might not happen. But what is true right now, because that's only what you can deal with right now anyways. So I love that.
It's true. Always said, and in many conversations we've had, I've always said that I find awareness is key. Having that awareness, because once you, as you said, I mean, for me in yoga, and I'm just going to speak to this really briefly, we talk about shadow work. You know, we start to notice our patterns, our tendencies, the things that we always do and the origins of it, and, you know, beginning to recognize those patterns so we can change the narrative and pull ourselves back or pull ourselves up before we go back down that same rabbit hole, that same path again. It's the same thing. So you're saying that that is how you would kind of like, forgive me for you putting it this way, but this is the only way that I can think of right now. So we'd use the hypnotherapy to kind of like plant that seed, that when you feel the emotion coming up, or if you feel, or you start to hear that voice. I remember Nicole and we did I can't remember if it was Boundaries, one of our podcasts, we were talking about the angel and the devil on the shoulders.
Yeah.
And one of them is telling you the negative self-talk. So when you hear that one starting to speak, you kind of like, that's how the hypnotherapy would come into place. Is that how it would work?
Yeah, like in this particular case, I'm imagining like whether should I listen to my self-critic or should I not? Like there's a self-critic, there is a compassionate part of me that goes talking right now. And yeah, in hypnotherapy, and I'm just thinking about a couple of clients, I can share a story that will invite them to consider the possibility of not listening to their inner critic. Let's say, actually, my teacher, that's his story. He was so obsessed with becoming the best hypnotherapist in the world, and he was so self-critical all the time. And he was studying with the founder of the cognitive behavioral therapy, which I'm spacing on his name now, but he was like, "Why are you so chill? Like, how do you do that? You don't have a self-critical voice or something like that?" And he said, like, "No, I just don't listen to it." And for him, it was like, "What? You can have it, but you don't have to listen to it." But he was like, changed everything, you know?
Totally.
Like,
yeah, it's so true. I love that. I've never really heard it put and phrased in that way, but it's so true. It's always there. You don't have to listen to it though.
Yeah. But we're so too, you know, it's almost like our default. You didn't realize we have a choice.
Yeah, right. Comes right back to empowerment and choices. Like you can, one of my mantras lately that I'm just kind of thinking, oh, that's kind of actually me, and like owning that choice to just not listen to it is what else is also true. So when those fear thoughts come up, I'm like, okay, that fear or whatever is true, but what else is also true is that I've had this fear before and I know how to move through it, or I've had this situation before and I made my, or it's not actually as bad as I'm feeling it to be right now because XYZ, like sometimes those phrases work and other times those phrases don't work and it changes a lot. But what else is also true is kind of been a mantra of mine lately, because you're right, like otherwise you just kind of get stuck. But I love that idea. Is like, actually, no, you're choosing not to listen to it. Like that. I like choice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for giving us a little bit more explanation on that. I think it's really interesting and there's tons of value there. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, Yelena is going to tell us a little bit more about how you can get in touch with her and work with her and the work that she does with her clients. So stay tuned.
Hi there, I'm Jen, co-host of the Elevated Feminine podcast, where real women have real conversations. If there's a topic you are passionate about and want to share your views and ideas, then we want to hear from you. Send us an email at elevatedfeminine9@gmail.com. We can hardly wait to have a conversation with you.
Amazing. Welcome back, friends. You're listening to the Elevated Feminine podcast with your co-hosts, Nicole and Jen. And we're here with our amazing guest, Yelena Theofilatos. I'm just trying to say it. Hopefully I'm getting it pretty close. And we've been talking about hypnotherapy and the nervous system and talking all about basically empowering ourselves for happier, thriving lives. So Yelena is going to talk to us a little bit about how you can get in touch with her and the work she does. So Yelena, can you tell us a little bit about how people can work with you and how they can get in touch with you? Because all of this stuff is super important, super helpful, and we really want to be able to help people find you.
Oh, thank you so much. So yeah, you can find me whether on Instagram, My Blooming Heart Hypnotherapy, one word, My Blooming Heart Hypnotherapy. And my website is mybloomingheart.com.
Perfect. We'll make sure it's written in the description as well. And how can people work with you? What kind of services, or what does that look like? What offerings do you have?
Well, currently, and by the time this airs, I probably just going to be doing, for sure, still doing one-on-ones. Might have some courses going on by then, but don't quote me on that. So we can focus on the one-on-ones that I have right now. And I have 3 different ways people can work with me, meaning depending on the modality they want to pick, because I can either do very much hypnotherapy, hypnosis centered work, or I can do no hypnotherapy involved, just pure coaching, pure like talk, this skill building work. And I can do a mixture of those two. And as of right now, and I'm pretty sure there'll still be there when this airs, I have like 3.5 meeting package that I call Catalyze that I adore. It's hypnotherapy inspired. And it's basically the solution focused conversation. The first meeting, it's all conversation. There is no hypnotherapy involved, because before I guide people, I really have to know them. I know it's not like I can know somebody in one meeting, but I'm looking for specific things that I then take and I write a hypnotherapy session for them specifically in between those times we meet. Then the second meeting is that guided session. Then the third meeting, we check in about the difference it has made in their life, what are the insights that help come up for them. And I also teach them self-hypnosis. So for me, it's like a complete thing. So they not just like did one-off hypnotherapy session and they gone, they can take everything that they learn and actually keep reinforcing it if they learn how to do it with me in self-hypnosis. And then we have a call after that, like in a couple of weeks after they already have applied it a couple of times at least, to iron out any kind of thing that they're trying to get clarity on in terms of their self-work. So I call it catalyzer because it's not necessarily super comprehensive in terms of what I can give in terms of the skills to deal with like nervous systems or the worry mind specifically, which other packages do. But if you stuck, it kind of propels you through the stuckiness of your situation. Here we go, a new word. And kind of puts you in a different state of mind that you can work with and with yourself from this point on. So it's not as comprehensive as the other two. Other two are a little more like, okay, here's what we're doing. This is all the skills you need to learn. I have a workbook for that, and we go from one to another. And there's much more of a what I said, skill building than in a first package.
And so your one-on-ones, do people work with you for a certain amount of time? Or is it kind of based on client? Is it a session number? How does that sort of work?
As of right now, it's like a standard thing. I do the catalyzer, the hypnotherapy one that I was talking about, is like 3 sessions plus 1 check-in, like a shorter session, so 4, I guess, total. It can be modified if we want. I feel like we need a couple more sessions, of course we can add it. I'm just not going to do less than that. That's the thing. It's more of a me. I'm not going to do one-off hypnosis session because I don't necessarily believe in the efficiency of that in terms of the long term. And the rest of the harmonizer, all those funny names that I have, is 6 sessions, and integrator, which is like takes hypnotherapy and coaching together, is 9. That's like the average that I do that can be modified.
Beautiful. That's awesome. So there's kind of like
tiers, levels.
Yeah, how deep you want to go, basically, in that. Pick your journey. Yeah.
And these are offered online and in person?
Right now, only online, but what you see around me, it's my office that my husband basically built by himself that just needs a bathroom to be hooked up to, like the plumbing needs to be done. So it's going to be in person, but right now only Zoom.
Beautiful. Okay. So if you're if you're in Hawaii, what island are you on again?
I'm on the Big Island.
Big Island. So, or if you want to travel to the Big Island to go see Yelena in person, that's where you can find her.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Yelena, for being here. I'm not even going to try to pronounce your last name. I'm not going to go there.
Great, ladies, and I'm
totally doing great. But we thank you so much for taking the time to be here with Nicole and myself and Bijou and all of our listeners and supporters and sharing this, incredible information about hypnotherapy and demystifying it and letting us know the differences and the little nuances between the guided meditation and everything, and sharing your knowledge and your heart and your time. We appreciate you so much for being here. And it's been a riveting conversation, as they always are.
Remember, friends, you have a choice. You can listen to the good, positive, helpful conversation in your head, or you can choose to listen to the destructive. You have a choice.
Yes.
Choose wisely.
If you have difficulty choosing, Yelena can help you with that.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
So we thank you so much for being here and joining us once again on the Elevated Feminine podcast, where real women have real conversation.